Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. We begin today with immigration and how, with each passing day, we are seeing South Florida torn apart by the realities of President Trump's policies of rounding people up. Of course, this is not what the president campaigned on. His supporters were told the federal government would be targeting violent criminals. But as we now know, many, if not most of the people being snatched off the streets by masked agents have no criminal records. They are folks who have lived here for years, raised families, and contributed to making South Florida special. A few weeks ago, I talked about how fear was the greatest tool in the government's arsenal. And with each passing day, that is proven to be true. Now, of course, here in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis doesn't want to miss out on all the fun. And so, along with his hand-picked attorney general, they came up with, wait for it, Alligator Alcatraz, a facility on an abandoned airport in the heart of the Everglades that the state has now seized and is expected to house thousands of illegal immigrants. Don't you just love the name, Alligator Alcatraz? It's special, isn't it? Nobody says heartlessly degrading people can't be fun, too. Here is Attorney General James Uthmeier laughing about it on a right-wing podcast last week.
We believe in the swamp down here in Florida. We're swamp creatures. But no, it's a great facility. The state will be able to use it for a long time.
This is using the swamp to your advantage. Do you understand? This is Sun Tzu, art of the swamp.
Now, when I think of the Everglades, I think about the beauty of what Marjorie Stoneman Douglas called the river of grass. And no one single person is more responsible for capturing that beauty than the photographer Clyde Butcher. He has spent 40 years taking the most amazing photographs of a place few of us truly understand. And so while there are others who can debate the policy of what the state is doing, I wanted to hear from Butcher and what he had to say about Alligator Alcatraz.
When I first heard the word Alligator Alcatraz, and it was a terrible, forbidding place, it really made me mad. Because the Everglades is probably one of the most natural, organic, beautiful places in the entire world. It's not. I've been walking through the Everglades now for 40 years, and I've never been attacked by a gator. I mean, I've walked into miles and all day long. Never been attacked by a gator. I've done a lot of work on Airport Road. We call it Airport Road that goes to the airport there, Jetport. Never even seen a gator. Well, this whole thing they used was a PR thing to think this is a wasteful, non-important place.
Well, what concerns you most about the idea of having this detention facility out there on that airport?
Well, there's all kinds of problems they're going to have, or I'm going to have with them. They're going to have generators that are putting that black diesel smoke in the air. They're going to have huge problems with water, hurricanes. What's going to happen out there when a hurricane hits? That whole area will flood all the way over Highway 41. It'll wash everything away, probably kill half the people there. I mean, it's such a stupid thing to do that it's almost. I don't think they did any kind of environmental report. I don't think our administration even wants to hear about environmental reports. Was there any permits pulled from Collier County to do this?
Well, the governor this week said that they didn't have time to do any of that sort of review, but that he's confident that this will have no environmental impact. And he says that there's the Everglades, he's been a huge supporter of in terms of making sure that they get funding for the Everglades. And so why, do you not trust the governor when he says that this will have no impact on the Everglades?
When someone says you're going to put 5,000 people in the middle of the Everglades and tell me there's going to be no impact, you're crazy. There's all kinds of impact. They're going to be spraying for mosquitoes and bugs. It's going to encourage a whole series of rats, which will probably bring the pythons there. You're going to have 500 or 600 employees there. They have to do the laundry. They got to feed all these people. They got to have these people that's going to be living out in this hot tent. They're going to have to take a shower probably every other day, and which they probably won't let them do. So it's going to be a health issue. I just can't believe it. The diesel, to have enough generators to run for 5,000 people, that's going to create a huge noise. The animals don't particularly care for that. Try to get a permit to put 5,000 people in the Everglades. You'll never get that permit. How can you believe this guy? I mean, he's just lying through his teeth.
I mean, Clyde, did you think that you'd be fighting environmental fights at this point in your life?
I'm 83 years old, and I thought, oh, we got this. We've done our fighting. We got the Everglades saved, and then this comes up. So I guess you just can't. You can't. The evil doesn't stop. If you can make money, it just continues onward. I think this is a cancer that will lead to building permanent structures out there, which we've fought several times. They wanted to do all kinds of things out there that we fought, and since the federal government wasn't behind it, we were able to fight it. But being the federal government and the state government, it's going to be a tough battle. My love for the Everglades is so much that you can't do this. This is just wrong. It's just wrong. And anybody that says this is not going to affect the Everglades has got something wrong with their brain, or their heart.
When we return, we will talk to Josh Weil, the Democrat who recently announced he was running against Ashley Moody for the United States Senate. Stay with us. Welcome back. Earlier this month, Josh Weil, a public school teacher from Central Florida, announced he was running for the United States Senate next year against Ashley Moody. In April, Weil, a Democrat, ran in a special election for Congress against Randy Fine, where he raised nearly $14 million. And although Weil lost by 14 points, it was considered a strong performance in a district Donald Trump had won by 30 points. I started our interview by asking him why he's running.
People here in Florida are struggling. Housing and insurance are out of control. There are threats to Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, veterans benefits. Our public education system is under attack, and we need someone in Washington who will fight for the people of Florida. Ashley Moody is committed to serving her party and billionaires and corporations, but I am willing to fight for the people here in Florida.
Do you support President Trump's decision to bomb the nuclear sites in Iran?
The entire purpose of having the largest military arsenal in the world should be to preserve peace, right? It is Pete Hegseth's job is the Secretary of Defense, not the Secretary of Offense. Everything they do should be about de-escalation, the preservation of life, land, and liberty for anyone. If we're going to get involved in foreign conflicts, it should be to ensure the preservation of human life. So I am, if the Iran nuclear issue was really that important to them, then they shouldn't have bailed out of the talks last time.
Well, I mean, they would argue that the region is now safer because Iran, is now much further away from being able to create a nuclear device.
We do also have international coalitions that we're a part of that monitor. We have regulations and processes for these. There is a global community that oversees these things and does not rely on the United States to, do rapid military strikes in order to maintain the system and keep peace.
What do you, I mean?
Bombing for peace is something that just is never going to, you're not going to be able to sell me on.
I want to turn to immigration for a second. What's your position on what they're calling Alligator Alcatraz, and what are your solutions when it comes to the issue of illegal immigration in the United States?
You know, people, especially in government, right? They show you their values with their budgets. They show you their values with where they prioritize and think money is worthwhile. Ron DeSantis sent money back to the federal government that could have gone to our public schools. He took money out of Medicaid in order to fund his attack on citizens' initiatives. And yet he's more than happy to take it to create what, and let's be honest, it's a fine line between detention centers and internment camps, right? Additional places to remove the freedoms of people who, for the most part, what we're seeing are not illegal immigrants, right? If you're here from Cuba or Venezuela, you're here on temporary protected status, protected. You are here under the government's protection because the nation you came from is listed as a major threat, is listed as a troubled area and part of the world. To be detaining these people who, contribute to our labor, contribute to the beautiful diversity of Florida. This is not what anyone asked for. Down in South Florida, we have the founder of Latinas for Trump. She came out and said, this is not what we voted for. This is not what the people here want. And this is not a solution to the immigration issue.
Donald Trump supporters would argue that if you look at what has happened along the border itself, illegal crossings have come to a trickle. So he has solved the issue of illegal border crossings. The question now is what you do with those who are currently in the United States, such as Venezuelans with TPS, Cubans, Nicaraguans, others, Haitians. What should be done with those folks?
So we've got multiple things here. First up is the data collection of illegal border crossings, right? The data that we get from this administration, and even when they were not the administration, and what we saw from some conservative news sources during the Biden administration, how they have such good tracking and solid numbers of people who are off the record not coming through. And yet there's also the belief that, by increasing tariffs that will slow down fentanyl, imports and such, like that's being declared at the border. And, but where they claim to get the numbers and what these numbers are is fairly nonsensical and non-sourced. So we start from that. Second is immigration is probably the most complicated issue that we have to deal with. It is not a single variable. Border security is one part of it. Law enforcement is part of it. Agriculture and labor is part of it. Tourism, which leads to hospitality, is part of it. And here in Florida, where we don't have a state income tax and we rely heavily on tourism dollars in sales tax from people visiting from other states and other countries, this completely negligent immigration policy that has cascading effects through all of these other areas is incredibly harmful for our state to be able to fund the essential services it wants to, right? So we have an immigration plan here that before we even get into how needlessly cruel and inhumane it is, right, there's a reason why most administrations don't just go full Leroy Jenkins towards immigration like this, because it has massive economic impacts across the board, right? So this is not a well thought out policy. It is not keeping people safe, right? We're watching here in Florida, we're seeing them go out to construction sites and work sites and just rounding up everyone who's, a shade darker than I am and putting them in ice trucks. This is not taking criminals off the street. It is just needlessly cruel in targeting people of a specific ethnicity, which really should violate and go against every core value we hold as Americans.
When we come back, Governor Ron DeSantis signs the Tristan Murphy Act into law. We'll have a full report in a moment. Stay with us. Anyone who regularly watches this show knows the story of Tristan Murphy. A schizophrenic sent to prison on a littering charge, the 37-year-old killed himself with a chainsaw at a state prison in South Dade. On Tuesday, Governor Ron DeSantis signed the Tristan Murphy Act into law, a measure its supporters call the single most important piece of legislation out of Tallahassee in decades to help people with mental illnesses caught up in the criminal justice system. The law was in direct response to the CBS Miami documentary Warehouse, the life and death of Tristan Murphy. In a moment, we will hear from Tristan's mother, Cindy. But first, here's my report on the bill signing.
A lot of people that interact with the justice system, the root cause is not that they're bad people trying to harm others. It's that they've got a lot of mental health problems that are leading to behavior that is antisocial.
Governor Ron DeSantis describing the goal of the Tristin Murphy Act, which will allow police, prosecutors, and judges to prioritize treatment rather than incarceration for mentally ill individuals detained for most nonviolent offenses.
So to the extent that we can do that and identify that and potentially provide solutions for that, that's going to ultimately be better for taxpayers, it'll be better for the entire justice system, and it'll be better for the safety of our community.
Wednesday's bill signing was the culmination of nearly 4 years of pain and struggle for the Murphy family, including his parents, Cindy and Dennis Murphy, and his 2 sons, Cody and Colton, who looked on as DeSantis signed the bill into law.
This space is hard. It is hard, but it's worth running to the fight.
Senate President Ben Albritton made passing this bill one of his top priorities.
There are people today in Florida that are suffering that could just use a hand up. It's not a handout. Use a hand up. For us to show that this is in us, right? That bring out the best in us and share that with folks that are challenged and folks that are struggling. Today's a big day.
The new law also provides greater resources and allows judges greater latitude to make sure individuals with mental illnesses get the follow-up care they need. Jennifer Bradley was the bill's sponsor in the Senate.
This is a law and order bill. This recognizes that those folks with mental illness, with serious mental illness, they need treatment, long-term recovery, and stability. That makes safer communities, stronger communities. This bill is a game changer.
Albritton and others all noted that if Cindy and Dennis Murphy had not had the courage to let their son's painful story be told, none of this would have happened.
And Cindy and Dennis, I don't know where to start. I guess maybe I should just leave it at this. I am better today knowing you.
A day after the ceremony, I spoke to Cindy Murphy.
So many people have texted me and reached out to me or emailed me, and my response back to everybody was, it was a good day. It was just overall a really good day. It was something we've been working for so long. In some ways bittersweet, but it was so good to finally get this across the finish line.
Why was it important for you to have Colton and Cody there?
Cody's been following this process all along. He's went to Tallahassee with me on one trip, and although he didn't testify, I read a statement that he made. So he's been advocating and understanding this whole process and watching it very, very closely, really advocating in his own way as a 17-year-old and hoping that this bill would get passed. So he needed to see it come to a conclusion too. Colton, he knows that we've been gone to Tallahassee. We've been doing trips. We've been working on this legislation, but he doesn't really fully understand it. He's only 9 years old. There's a lot of facts that he doesn't understand. My conversations with him have been really low key. The other day we were in the pool floating and we were talking about it in a casual way, and why we're going, why we're doing this. And it was actually the day that they called and invited us up for the signing. And I said, you're going to get to meet the governor. And he said, well, why does the governor want to meet me? And I said, well, we've been working on that act, and we had this nice conversation about it. But so he's been involved to an extent where he's aware, but he doesn't know the details, and he won't until he's older. But I wanted to have one defining moment where he was there, where he was present. There'll actually be 2, because he watched the voting count on the board when it passed in the House. He was there with me then, and he got to experience that moment. But I thought it was really important for him to have this moment where it was kind of monumental. And I think he was a little stunned, because when we got there, we went into the sort of waiting room or whatever, and then came back out. And when he came back out, they brought him back out. There was a room full of people, and he was being brought up behind the governor to stand next to him. And saw him signing and the formality of it. And I think that was like when it really hit him. Wow, this is a big deal. This is a big deal for my dad.
Did he say anything?
He's talked about it quite a bit when we were coming home. And since he's been home, he's like, yeah, I mean, he gets that something big just happened and that it was good. And it was because of his dad.
I know this doesn't take away the pain of what happened to Tristan, but seeing this law enacted now and believing that it will make a difference going forward, how do you look at it? And obviously you would wish that this event never occurred, but where do you sort of place this now? How do you see the passage of this law and that's being signed into act? How do you see it now?
Yeah, I'm so thankful that it got passed. And I am so grateful to everybody that worked so hard on this, because I really think that it's going to make a big difference into the future for people who get snagged up in the justice system. I think it's going to give a lot of opportunities that didn't exist for Tristan to those who are yet to come. I think the heartache that I still have is knowing that there are so many people incarcerated in the state of Florida who got snagged up just like Tristan did, who are in there not because they did something horribly wrong, but because they were mentally ill. And I have always felt that it's wrong to criminalize people for their mental health. I think we're still doing that. There's this, I don't know how many people are in the Florida prisons who are still suffering in that way. And knowing what I know about the system, although they attempt to give good treatment and care, that it's not the level of services that they would get on the outside of the community. These folks are separated from their families and their support groups. And I just, my heart really breaks for those who have been left behind. And I kind of wish that maybe this is just the first wave of legislation. Maybe we need to be looking at some of those folks that are languishing in there and say, hey, maybe they need a second chance. Maybe we need to look at some diversion for them. Maybe we need to look at long-term injectables. That's one thing that was in the other bill that I was really excited to see. Yeah, I mean, I just relieved going forward, but still have this heaviness settled on my heart.
You often talk to me about having conversations with Tristan. Did you have one last night, and what did you tell him after the signing?
He's just always on my mind, and we just kind of bounce these thoughts back and forth. And I just, I think that he would be really happy with the signing. I think he'd be good that that something good came from him, that he'll be remembered in a positive way. Honestly, yesterday, I think it was more like, Tristan, you would have loved this water park that we're at with your kids. We went there to celebrate. I wish you could be here today. I wish you could watch Colton go down this terrifying slide at age 9, without any fear, So our thoughts yesterday were more like that. But I think when things settle down and I take my next walk around the pond that I often hike around, he and I are going to have a conversation. Yeah.
I will always be grateful for Cindy for allowing me to tell her son's story. You can see the documentary Warehouse by going to our homepage at cbsmiami.com. Well, that's all the time we have today. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to contact me at jdefede@cbs.com. I do enjoy hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.